Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide, a reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that polio is a virus that has existed since ancient times? Learn how polio affected children, making it difficult for them to move their legs, while people with severe polio had to use an iron lung machine to help them breathe. Discover that President Franklin D. Roosevelt contracted polio in 1921, causing him to be permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Learn how this illness shaped his leadership during the Great Depression and World War II, and how he hid his disability from the public to project strength while leading efforts to fight the disease.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so glad you are joining us.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We have a really incredible topic today.
We really do. Today we're unpacking the history of the polio pioneers. We're going to explore how a massive, totally unprecedented public effort combined with, just sheer scientific breakthroughs to conquer this ancient, terrifying disease.
It's honestly one of the most, profound mobilizations in public health history.
Oh, absolutely. And, looking back at our recent experiences with the COVID-19 epidemic, it taught us so much about infectious diseases.
Right. The sudden lockdowns, the isolation.
Yeah, that desperate race for a vaccine. It makes us look back at a previous public health triumph feel incredibly resonant for all of us today.
Because we actually know what it feels like now to wait for a breakthrough,
We do. But the scale of what happened in the mid-20th century is almost hard to comprehend. Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly was the world facing in the first half of the 20th century?
Well, the medical term is poliomyelitis, and we need to present this as the chilling reality it was. It was an ancient infectious disease.
Right.
Caused by a virus that just became a massive epidemic in the first half of the 1900s. The paradox here is that the virus is ancient.
Like how ancient are we talking?
Like ancient Egyptian carvings depicting victims with withered limbs, ancient.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But for thousands of years, it was just this endemic background noise. Infants typically caught it while they were still protected by maternal antibodies, passed on from their mothers.
So they wouldn't get very sick.
Exactly. Because of those antibodies, the infant would experience a mild infection, recover easily, and then they'd have lifelong immunity.
Right. But something changed, the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah. The rise of modern sanitation completely flipped the script. As cities cleaned up their water supplies and put in modern plumbing, infants weren't exposed to the virus early in life anymore.
Wait, are you saying that introducing clean water and better sanitation actually caused the epidemic?
In a really tragic way, yeah. They caught it much later in childhood, or even as adults, long after those protective maternal antibodies had completely faded away.
So without that early shield, the virus was just free to invade the central nervous system.
That's exactly it. And the physical toll was horrifying.
It really was. I mean, it most commonly attacked children, causing severe difficulty in moving their legs. The specific horrors of this disease are just hard to overstate.
And it wasn't just the legs. The worst symptom was what it did to the lungs.
Yeah, think of it this way. Imagine your brain is like a central control board, right?
Okay.
And it's running all these automatic systems in your body. Polio's ability to prevent people from getting enough air into their lungs was like that central control board just forgetting how to run the essential automatic system.
The electrical signal just gets cut.
Right. The brain is screaming for the diaphragm to expand, but the signal can't get there. And this led to patients relying entirely on the terrifying iron lung machine to breathe.
Which is just a haunting piece of medical history. Fully conscious people, cognitively perfectly intact, inside these massive metal cylinders that use negative pressure to physically force their chests open and closed, day and night.
The sheer scale of that terror is hard to grasp.
It is. By the late 1940s, outbreaks were rapidly increasing. It was disabling over 35,000 people every single year in the U.S. alone.
35,000.
Every year. Yeah. And it wasn't just a childhood disease either. Adults were vulnerable too.
Right. Which brings us to a major catalyst. President Franklin D. Roosevelt contracted it as an adult.
Having a sitting president in a wheelchair because of this virus fundamentally shifted the entire nation's response.
It really did. In 1938, which was 5 years into his presidency, FDR created the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis.
Which was later renamed the March of Dimes.
Exactly. And this was basically crowdsourced science. They were asking ordinary citizens to mail their dimes to the White House to fund a cure.
And it worked.
The March of Dimes became this massive funding engine. They funneled all that public money directly to the medical researchers who were desperately racing to find a cure.
Which brings us to the medical miracle side of this deep dive.
Enter Dr. Jonas Salk.
Right.
He was a New York physician and medical researcher heavily funded by the March of Dimes, and he achieved something monumental. He developed the first successful injected polio vaccine.
You use a killed virus, right?
Yes, an inactivated virus. He treated it with formaldehyde so it couldn't cause disease, but it taught the immune system to recognize the threat. He was hailed by the world as a miracle worker for this.
But wait, I have a question about this timeline.
Sure.
If Salk was so successful with injections, how did we end up with the iconic image of children eating sugar cubes? Because when people talk about the polio vaccine, that's what they remember.
That is a great question, and it introduces Dr. Albert Sabin's work in the 1960s.
Okay, so a different doctor entirely.
Exactly. Sabin went through this incredibly rigorous process. He spent years growing and testing many different poliovirus strains in animals and tissue cultures.
Searching for something specific.
Yes. He finally isolated 3 specific mutant strains that stimulated antibody production but were weakened enough not to attack the nervous system.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Sabin's core philosophy was totally different from Salk's, wasn't it?
It was. Sabin believed that an oral vaccine would be vastly superior and much easier to administer than an injection.
Because it mimicked natural infection in the gut.
Right. Polio enters through the mouth. Sabin wanted to stop transmission at the front door, so to speak, and this led to the successful sugar cube delivery method.
Which is brilliant because kids are obviously terrified of needles, but a sugar cube, that's easy.
Totally easy. No massive fleets of nurses with sterile needles required.
But here's the thing. These incredible lab breakthroughs, Salk's killed virus and Sabin's live strains, they would mean absolutely nothing without willing human subjects to test them on.
That's the real crux of this story.
Yeah, we have to pivot from the scientists to the children.
The logistics of the March of Dimes-sponsored trials are just staggering. I mean, nearly 1.8 million children stepped up to participate.
1.8 million kids.
Across the United States, Canada, and Finland, it was an army of polio pioneers.
Let's paint the picture of the very first day. Ground zero.
April 26, 1954.
Right. At Franklin Sherman Elementary School in McLean, Virginia, a 6-year-old boy named Randy Kerr became the first of nearly 4,000 kids to be vaccinated that day.
Just a little kid in elementary school. And we actually have direct memories from some of the actual polio pioneers in the source material.
Oh, I love reading those accounts. They're so visceral.
They really are. There's an anonymous memory of someone waiting in line at E.F. Swaney Grade School in Kansas City, Missouri. They just remember the sheer tension of the line slowly moving forward.
The anticipation must have been terrifying for a kid.
Totally. And then there's Cindy, who remembered receiving her little metal polio pioneer button in 1954. She kept it her whole life.
A badge of courage.
Yeah. And Jane, she remembered wearing a brand new dark green print dress in 2nd grade at David W. Harlan School in Wilmington, Delaware.
Why the special dress?
Because the local news was filming. It was a massive media event. Emerito had a similar experience. He made the front page of the New York Post at PS9 in Brooklyn. He lives in Puerto Rico now, and that clipping is practically a family heirloom.
That's amazing. But the memory that really stood out to me was Corey's.
From Nathan Hale Elementary.
Yes, in Huntington, New York. Corey remembered their parents having heated conversations about participating in the sugar cube trials.
Because it wasn't an easy choice.
Not at all. It's a reminder to all of us that parents were making high-stakes, deeply stressful decisions about their children's safety. They were on the absolute frontier of medicine.
They were signing up for a double-blind trial during a raging epidemic. Half the kids got a placebo.
Right. You're risking your child's life, essentially, hoping they get the real thing and hoping the real thing actually works.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this heavy responsibility of making medical choices actually connects to a much older, deeper human philosophy.
A philosophy about health, community, and spirituality.
Yes. The source material delves into this spiritual framework. In times of illness, the responsibility to care for our bodies has long been intertwined with faith.
It's a really ancient concept.
Right. There's the historical belief that Jesus healed the sick and granted his disciples the power and authority to heal.
So there's a moral imperative there to fight illness.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how that bridged the gap between faith and science during the polio era.
That brings up a really profound quote from the sources. It's from 1857 from President Brigham Young.
Oh yeah, that quote perfectly captures this mindset.
He taught that it is appropriate to apply every remedy that comes within the range of my knowledge, and at the same time, asking the Father in heaven to sanctify that application for healing.
It's a total synthesis of practical action and spiritual reliance.
Right? It is so striking. It entirely rejects the idea that faith and practical medicine are at odds.
Yeah.
It presents them instead as a unified approach to our responsibility to stay healthy.
It's not one or the other, it's both. And that multifaceted approach, spiritual, scientific, communal, it fueled the sheer determination of the entire era.
Everyone was moving in the same direction.
Presidents, scientists, parents, kids, all of them.
So after all that massive societal effort, what was the ultimate payoff?
Yeah, the statistics are almost unbelievable. Within just 1 year, Salk's vaccine was declared safe and effective.
Just 1 year.
Yeah, and within 4 years, new polio cases in the U.S. plummeted by 90%.
90% in 4 years. That's a total collapse of the epidemic.
And ultimately, the United States has been completely polio-free since 1979.
It's just incredible. Today, polio rarely exists, leaving behind this fascinating historical footprint.
The artifacts are everywhere once you start looking.
Yeah, like those little metal polio pioneer cards the kids kept, or the old March of Dimes media campaigns. I mean, they even featured Captain Kangaroo.
The whole culture was mobilized.
And there are those historical reflection videos, too, like the 1995 polio announcement reflection, showing people crying in the streets when the vaccine was declared a success.
It was treated like the end of a war.
Because it was. Which brings us to the questions the source material poses directly to you, our listener.
Important questions to think about today.
After hearing about this massive collective health triumph, what do you do to stay healthy? And what do you do to help others have good health?
Because public health is deeply interconnected, it's a shared responsibility.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought that builds on everything we've talked about.
Okay.
Given that nearly 1.8 million children participated in these trials, we so often think of miracles as singular moments of genius by people like Dr. Salk or Dr. Sabin in a lab.
The lone scientist having a eureka moment.
Right. But looking at Corey's parents having those heated, terrified conversations, or Jane dressing up in her green dress for the local news, perhaps the true machinery of a miracle isn't just the science itself.
What is it then?
Perhaps it's the sheer, agonizing courage of ordinary families willing to step into the unknown for the sake of the future.
That is a really powerful thought to end on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.